program is and what our goals are as far as elementary school goes, middle school goes, and what have you.
Sure, yeah. So I think on the middle school side, I think that we have some various options we can explore, as some of the students shared today, whether that be through North Carolina Virtual Public Schools or others. I think it's important as we ask these students to complete these programs, if we do, that we're not asking them to do something in addition to their regular curriculum. I don't think that's fair to ask that student to complete 7 or 8 courses when everyone else is only completing 6 in the building. So I think we need to navigate that. On the elementary school side, I think really the biggest component is we need to go back to our roots of the program and what it was built for, in identifying the students that this program is really helping to have success. I don't think anyone would argue that there are lots of great successes related to the program. I think the component that we have maybe needed to monitor is are the students who are enrolled in the programs currently seeing that success? And just like I think with any other program we would have in the district, as you progress from year to year to year in a program, there's some targets and some markers we need you to hit in order to continue to remain with that. And so I think that's part of what we need to evaluate is on academic achievement side. Are we serving these students, and are they having the academic achievement that the state says we are responsible to provide for them, and really monitor that with the enrollment piece. Other specifics you need me to share?
I know that the discussion that you and I had regarding middle school programs was we do offer those classes to middle schoolers to achieve their high school credit.
Correct.
My daughter's one of them. She's taken both of her high school Spanish classes in middle school, so that's one thing that she doesn't have to worry about at Triton. So that was one of the things I heard mentioned tonight, was providing that resource for students in middle schools, and that is 100% there, and to my knowledge is not going anywhere. Maybe making it somewhat more accessible or more readily available to everyone. But one of the places of heartburn I've had with the program through the years, even before I sat up here, was students ultimately having lower standards for achievement in the dual language program. If you have a lower standard in kindergarten and you're not meeting that standard, you make it to first grade, you're that much behind. Then moving on to second grade, you're that much behind. It was mentioned tonight that Harnett County is a low-income area, and whether we want to admit it or not, trends follow that lower-income families do not provide the support needed to students for academic achievement. And whenever you have this sort of situation, it does not prepare them for the future. And whenever they get to middle school, they're that much further behind. So that is a sticking point that I've had with this program through many years. But as far as that goes, explain how classes have to be divided and numbers work with each class.
Yeah, so in most of our schools, you have 50% instruction in English, 50% instruction in Spanish provided by 2 teachers. And so when you do that and you have, let's just say at a given school there's 35 students enrolled in a dual language program. When you split that in half and you have 17 in one room and 16 in another, that's where we begin to see the imbalances in that, a classroom down the hall that is not necessarily a dual language class, that the state allows 30 students to be in, maybe pushing that cap. And so that is part of where the class size imbalance comes in, is that when you split them for that 50-50. While when we have other situations where they're not split, like for instance at Cooks Elementary, there's not a split. Sometimes in order to try to keep class size balance, You do possibly have students who are remaining in the program who are not meeting those academic benchmarks because of a class size component. I think the other thing that you hit on that's reality is we can all sit up here and certainly be frustrated with the way the state measures our students, and those state measures our schools. But I think the reality is every one of our students has to take a rigorous assessment at the end of the day, and that assessment is what we are held accountable to getting them ready for. And I think that's where we're seeing those achievement gaps in some of these students who have, as you said, been in their kindergarten, first, second grade, and maybe not acquired the English skills that they need to prepare for that third grade reading test.
And then the rationale for the particular schools being chosen for housing these programs.
So I kind of moved into that in my transitional role. If those decisions were there, I do know that it was important that we had geographically options on both sides. I also know that both of those campuses can support additional students. We just did an addition at both of those schools with ESSER money. So there is capacity-wise, they're able to handle that. And again, I've with a few families I've spoken with, I've compared it to like a magnet program that you would hear about in other districts, in that you choose a few sites that become your anchors for that magnet program. And I think that's kind of in line with what we're speaking of here.
Now, that was my understanding as well, that ultimately Coates is a fairly new school, but at the end of the day, we have students in huts there.
Correct.
And the capacity is, to me, just not available to bring in additional students onto that campus, whereas Dunn Elementary, we did just build that wing, and we do have that capacity.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Let's doing this program.
It's a little over 200.
A little over 200.
Mm-hmm.
How many have done?
A little less than 200. Yeah,
Less
like
than
a 180 number, I think.
What's the capacity of Coates?
Building capacity?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, sir. I know that we do have about 6 huts, I believe it is there, but I have to look back at our reports on core capacity there. But we are using multiple huts.
Is it about the capacity?
Is Coates at capacity?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sir, 100%.
Over capacity.
How about Dunn?
Dunn still has a little bit of space. We did have a pretty big wing there, and so we do have a little bit of space there. We are not using any huts currently at Dunn.
The only problem I've got with that, and I've always had a problem, I know a lot of you folks are probably from this side of the river, as I call it, okay? But I've always had a problem, why do we have to move everything to Dunn? That's like, Western Harnett or where I represent up in my district, taking something away from Western Harnett Middle School and moving it to Dunn site, or Coates and moving it to Dunn. The Coates, how long has that program been established at Coates? Do you know right off?
Well, I mean, we have students at Triton who have completed it, so I think we're around that 9-year mark, 9-10 years probably.
9 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Before that, this program was offered at Dunn, correct?
I'll lean on Ms. Thompson. I was in the principal's role at that time, so I'm not sure when we started that program.
I started the first program at North Harnett Primary School. Coates came alongside of that after we were started, so it was about 12 years ago.
About 12 years ago. Okay, thank you. That's all I have. I just have a problem if things are going good, I just don't understand the philosophy of moving things. We've been at Coates all this time, and we may do or may have. All of a sudden, we're going to up and some of those kids are done that's been doing well at Coates. Just don't. It don't sit right in my craw.
What is the proficiency rate of our eighth graders who pass that test and get the credit for the Spanish 1 and Spanish 2?
I'm unaware of that. I do believe it is pretty high, but that is not something that I have the data on in front of me right now. I did look at data in relation to some elementary school, particularly Coates Elementary School, and their EL learners and what their proficiency rate is. And that was part of, a data point that we certainly had to weigh. So for instance, in kindergarten this year at Coates, there are 23 students identified as EL learners. 21 of those are in a dual language program. Third grade proficiency for EL students at Coates Irwin is less than 5%. And so we have less than 5% of our third graders passing the reading test that are identified as EL students. And so those proficiencies I'm more familiar with. I do believe the 8th grade side is fairly successful. I can get that information, I'll
Yes,
share it with you.
if you could let us know how many of those 8th graders actually take the test and are
Get the high
proficient
school
and get
grade.
that high school
Okay.
grade, yes.
Are there other questions for Mr. Pearson? Okay, thank you, Mr. Pearson.
Yep.
No estoy jugando nada.
Action items, and our first item under action items is review and consider approval of the 2026-2027 board meeting calendar